I don't know what brought up the topic a few meetups ago, but I wanted to do a little bit of deep dive into scroll driven animations and a couple of new things coming into Chromium pretty soon. It's kind of awkward saying that at a UtahJS meetup, but here we are. Um, yeah, it's kind of I feel like the modern way of doing a lot of scroll animations is just kind of getting the height of a scroller and then being able to just like do some JS logic to like do timeline and stuff or use a library like GreenSock. Uh, that's at least my experience with it. It's interesting to see CSS to kind of become what it is now that we can now do stuff with it. And that's kind of what I covered today, just a little bit of a mini deep dive, sort of surface level. It kind of became a whole rabbit hole the more I started learning about a lot of this stuff. So I'll try to keep things a little tame for you guys. Um, so first off, what are scroll driven animations? So right now it's mainly just being able to attach or control the flow of an animation based off of your scroll position. And right here I have two different examples. Kind of scroll driven is kind of easily mistaken for something like scroll triggered animation, which once you hit a point in a page, it kind of just immediately starts animating everything. Whereas this is kind of what I'm kind of talking about, sort of like a parallax effect where you kind of scroll down and it's kind of controlled based off of just your scroll. Um, that's kind of the quick differentiation. You could probably do both of these with a lot of the new CSS stuff. Um, some of the stuff I'm gonna be covering today. Actually, I didn't even mention in here. I put that in recently. Intersection Observer API. Is a new JavaScript thing, which is probably more in tune with the top example of scroll triggered animations. Uh, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but um, that is kind of the difference I want to make up front is a lot of the stuff is just based off of being able to scroll and instead of trying to trigger when you scroll. If that made any sense, I'll try to answer some questions at the end. Um, So the main new properties coming to CSS are the animation timeline and the animation range. Uh, both of these are kind of your main sort of setup for different types of scrolling or different types of animations. Animation timeline kind of works within whether you want to base it off of the viewport, where you probably come across a website where you scroll and as something enters the viewport, it begins animating and you can kind of control it in that way. Or the scroll, where maybe something like a progress bar once you get to the maybe you've seen an example of like as you're scrolling on a website, you kind of see the little bar at the top and it's able to show you the progress of where you're at on the page. And then animation range is one that mostly applies to the viewport, mostly to sort of control how things are entering the viewport. And I'll show you guys some examples here in a bit of what I mean by a lot of this stuff. I'm just kind of give you a quick little rundown, and then we'll jump into some code here in a bit. Um, yeah, mentioned before, currently at 71%, so don't be using this in production. Probably not a great idea. But it's just kind of something that is proposed, I believe, by Chrome or just Chromium browsers. And Firefox, I was testing on it. You can enable it via a feature flag. Um, and that is the current state of it. But yeah, feel free to test it while during this presentation or yeah, play around with it. So it's a cool little feature. Um, all right, so what does the syntax for this kind of look like? So this quick example, we're gonna have just like a header and then just kind of a CSS progress bar. That's our HTML. And how this kind of works is you have your animation timeline. And if you're working with something like scroll, you're gonna want to define sort of you can do it anonymously and be able to just let it just work off the defaults, which is typically just kind of vertical scrolling, and you're just connecting it to the nearest, they call it the ancestor, which it's usually just like the HTML tag in your code. Um, you can be more specific if you want. If you want to define like a scroll timeline, you can attach it to that directly, and it'll just reference that. Cool examples like this kind of involve like scrolling horizontally if you want to, or just kind of, I don't know, sky's the limit. I've seen people do a lot of cool stuff with this, and yeah, like I said, I'm gonna be scratching the surface barely on this. There's some crazy stuff, and I'll try to show some cool examples at the end. Um, so here's a bit of a visualizer, and let me just pull up the dev tools. So as we're scrolling in this sort of box here, this is kind of an example of the scroller. It's a scroller function really, versus the view function. So scrollers for the ancestor, and then view is for the viewport. And this zoom is in my way. I'm gonna move that. Okay. Has that been blocking the entire time? Okay, cool. I cannot click on tabs. Everything's being blocked. All right. All right, yeah. So in the browser, you're mainly just dealing with this element right here, this scroller. In this example, they define just a scroll timeline and just give it a name. And the actual element that is going to be doing all of the scrolling, that's kind of just where you're going to be uh, setting up your animation, and then uh, using the new property animation timeline, and then they're just doing the defined scroller that was set there. And the whole purpose of the scroller is just go 0 to 100. And then you can set up sort of your animation to do anything in between that. I've seen examples of people doing weird stuff with like 3D effects, or even actually I think I have an example of that. I'll show that one here in a bit, of like using the power of like SVGs, or there's an HTML property for like 3D elements, like 3JS type of stuff, and you do a lot of cool stuff with that. But 2 lines of code versus like how many lines of JavaScript would that take to probably achieve something similar? I think it's I don't know, it's impressed me. It was really cool. And then here's kind of an example I kind of wanted to walk through, just kind of using this, putting this in action. I mentioned a progress bar, but before we do the actual CSS stuff, this is what it looks like in JavaScript. Is that, can people in the back see the code pretty well? Cool. So we're defining our event where we're just doing an on scroll, and then we're just calling a function anytime the user is able to scroll. So we're just gonna be calling an event every instance of scrolling. And we're just doing some JavaScript math here of just defining the actual window scroll, the height of the window, and then doing the math of how much the user scrolled up until then. And then we're just attaching that information just to the actual width property of the scroll. So when you scroll, you can kind of get a progress bar going. So pretty straightforward. But I was like, maybe what is that, 12 lines of code to get all that going. Where here in CSS, so I define my header, just basic styling, and then I'm just gonna comment out all of our JavaScript related stuff. If I'm going too quickly, I can slow down. Just let me know. And then I did define just a basic grow progress styling right here. And we're just going to, do I have 2 instances of it here? All right, we're just gonna go right here. We'll do animation, and then grow progress. We're gonna define our easing, linear. And then now let's do our animation timeline. And we're going to do scroll. And then let that reload. And I am missing some styling in here somewhere. Oh, yep, it's commented out. Good call. and boom. Oh, and autosave enabled. But yeah, 2 lines of code, we're able to get the exact same thing. And then that's a very basic example. I think I have, oh no, it closed all my tabs. I think I have another example in here. Let me just go to my work. And oh yeah, here's my sunset example. Um, this one I just have a wrapper, and then I just have 2 images in here, and then I just style them to be fixed in place. And uh, yeah, we just have our, let's see, do I have it set up in here? I believe I do not. So we have our wrapper, our mountain, and then we're just gonna add our animation here. And then I think, actually, no, I'm doing that in the wrong spot. Oh, no, I already added it here. All right, cool. Never mind. Okay. And then when we scroll, we get that scene from Rick and Morty. If anyone remembers that scene, that is it's a fun scene. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of it is very just simple animations. You can do a lot more complex stuff. CSS animations is a whole rabbit hole on its own. I was learning a lot as I was going through this. It was a fun time. Uh, and yeah, let's see. That's a basic kind of breakdown of our animation. Now, if we're working towards our viewport animation setup, so this one's a little bit different, where we kind of so this basic example, I'm doing a slide in from the right. So the idea I'm going for is as you're scrolling, something's going to come in from the right and just kind of slide into place. And then we're just kind of thinking just to an anonymous viewport timeline. And then animation range, excuse me, is it introduced a couple of they're not really new properties, but they're utilizing a lot of existing CSS properties. Cover and there's a I should have the oh I took out the comment out of this. But there's a similar to the scroll function, you have things like connecting the axis of how you want things to scroll, as well as let's see, I think they have it for let's see, maybe I'll just pull up the MDN. That might be easier. Animation range. I'm forgetting this part of it. Sorry, it's my first time doing this presentation, so I'm just trying to get my groove on. So the view function is somewhere in here. Let's see. Oh wait, I need the sorry, animation range is what I'm talking about. They have cover, contain, and then they also have entry and exit. So if you're looking at like a website like this, you can have like your exit and then you have your entry or vice versa. And so you can kind of define sort of when when you're scrolling and an element's coming through, you can sort of define at what point does it start animating. And there's actually a cool visualizer in here that I do actually want to show off because this one explains it a lot better than I am. And a lot of the stuff can be found at scroll-driven animations.style. It's kind of where I pulled a lot of the information from. Really cool place to learn a lot of this stuff. I believe was built by a lot of the Chrome developers. And so in here we can kind of find sort of our sort of ranges of when we want things to start playing out. And sort of when you scroll, you can kind of see the element hasn't touched has the entry of it hasn't entered the actual range of it, and then it starts animating, and then the last the end of it, once that hits the end, that's kind of how we're defining it. That is cover. If we want to do entry and then our exit, or maybe it's the other way around. Did I do this both twice? Oh, there we go. Exit. We can sort of define like how much distance from the exit and from the entry do we want our animation range to occur. I mean, for a good user experience, you probably want it to occur pretty early. So in here, let's do this probably a lot earlier. Actually, I might even just do entry and do it a few times in here, go 100%. And then maybe you're defining an element here and you want to just be animate quickly so the user can kind of see the main element as soon as possible. They even accounted for large elements. So we probably encountered an element that just probably is like 100 view heights or VH, and you can kind of define it sort of the same way. That way, you're not getting some funky behavior just as you're going through this. Um, it's pretty convenient, but at the end of the day, it's still like 3 lines of code compared to what it would take for JavaScript. I don't know. This is cool to me. It's like dealing with stuff like green stock animation. That was a nightmare of trying to just figure out the timing of everything and like the it's PTSD. All right, cool. uh, let's see. All right, and here's an example I kind of put together. So I can just have a sort of a splash screen and then some of the stuff I set up. We have, let's see. So I just have a few sections in here, and each of these sections I kind of just defined a couple of different animations. So we have like some like I'll just go through it. All right, so as we're going through this, kind of slides right in, and then it gets perfect for the user to see it right in the center. And then we have another one that's kind of scaling. And then nice little, actually this one I was using, I was actually wanting to just show the little bit of the difference between scroll driven and scroll triggered. So this one actually used JavaScript just to have the utilization of the intersection observer. So just as soon as you enter, I'm not scrolling. It just kind of animates automatically. It's not really controlled. So a little bit to show the difference of the two different types, and also to still use some JavaScript just to be able to exist in this meetup. And then the rest, I couldn't think of any other stuff to animate, but you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. And everything kind of animates also backwards. So you can kind of see the forward and reverse of all of the animations. All right. And all right. So when I was doing some research on this, I came across an article by Yuriko Hirota. I'm definitely butchering that name. Just kind of the reasoning behind bringing this type of stuff to CSS and the benefits behind it. A lot of it kind of came down to just how JavaScript animations differ from CSS animations, and sort of their actual ability to block the main thread from firing off different events. And they made a lot of the arguments of um, if we're able to take away the need for JavaScript animations, we can free up a lot of more resources um, for JavaScript to just run all of its probably more heavy and calculation heavy tasks. So one of the examples I think showed a good example of, let's see, I don't know if it's in here. But basically, like if you're running something similar to like the progress bar, and you're doing some very JavaScript intensive tasks, you're gonna run into probably some glitchy slash, it's not gonna be as smooth and very like sleek as you would expect it. I don't even know if they have an example of it in here. Oh, here it is. It's kind of a little stuttery. But that was kind of like a lot of the testing I was seeing just with like how JavaScript is able to handle it and how CSS is just kind of, you're just utilizing CSS animations and it becomes very, very straightforward. Um, yeah, and let's see. And then we could still use JavaScript. All right. I'm not saying it's full CSS here. But with this new update, they did come out with some JavaScript classes, or just utilizing the web animations API. So a couple use cases for this one are if you have a bunch of elements on the screen that you're trying to render at once, you can loop through them and give them all their own animation timeline, or scroll timeline, review timeline. And yeah, like you're still able to do what you were probably doing before, of even similar to the intersection observer. Just being able to handle it with CSS or JavaScript if needed. And then, oh yeah, parallax example. Oh, this one's gonna look rough, but I was trying to create parallax on my own, and there's a million windows open. Here it is. All right, so I grabbed a bunch of images from Copilot. Just this is top tier design. And let me actually walk you through the code a little bit. So I just kind of have a bunch of text just to kind of fill up the screen. And then I have my parallax wrapper. I have some hero text. And then I have a background image, a skeleton, and a samurai. And I just defined this parallax animation just to sort of base some calculations off of a predefined variable. I'll use that here in just a moment. So for each of these elements, we have our hero, our background, our samurai. I'm giving them all their own separate variable, just to sort of have that parallax effect where things move at different rates. And that kind of creates this effect. Hopefully this runs first try, where you can kind of go through and animate. I also gave a rotation to the background. That was recent. But this was mostly just a few lines of code. Just each of these have their own timeline and their animation going on. Like, I don't know, 2 lines of code. I don't know, that's just crazy. uh yeah, and then this is the one I just showed? Yeah, it was it just showed, yeah. And then we've got, all right, here's the stuff the cool uses of it I found so far. A lot of them are from the same person, this Lehi. He has some cool stuff on Twitter. He's always posting stuff, and yeah, he is much better at CSS than I am. So a lot of this was just different kind of configures you can kind of set up. You can have scroll snap on there, and if we're inspecting this, let's see, let's inspect these ones, and each of these have their own timeline, and they're just using the view function. And then he's just defining a lot of the stuff based off of how we're setting things here. And each of these, yeah, they all work backwards and forward, and you can get different animations going on here, different saturations, and a lot of the same stuff I was showing you before, probably just in a cleaner, more visual way. Let's see, this was really cool. I think one of these had the 3D one. No, this one's a text one where you can kind of get a nice, cool little like dust effect. I don't know how would you guys describe this effect? Ghostly, or sleepy? I'm not too sure. Yeah. Now, if I had more time, I probably would have built something like this, but that's too much CSS. And then this is the 3D one where they utilize something. I want to say they were doing just SVG, and they were just animating this cool little laptop. Like, that's just really cool effect. This guy, Lehi. And what is he doing in here? I think he's doing a bunch of keyframe stuff that I'm not going to bore everyone with trying to break down what he's even doing, because I don't even know. But yeah, let's see. And then yeah, it's just kind of just some of my resources I got from. If you ever go on Chrome, Chrome's YouTube channel. They have a like a 10 video course that you can kind of go through and learn a lot of this stuff. I pulled some of the stuff from there just to sort of like create simplified examples that you can use, and a lot of good documentation out there for this already. And yeah, that was me. I'm Manuel. You can connect me on LinkedIn. Yeah, thanks. Any questions? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. You could probably use, I mean, if you're not wanting it to go away, that might be a place to use the intersection observer. A lot of these are just kind of different tools, and it kind of depends on how you want to use them and what experience you want to build. You could probably have hmm, I mean, you could probably define your keyframes to do certain things, or maybe your animation only runs once. I think you can set that up in the animation property. Um, mm, that's a good use case. I'm not sure how to